Hey, can we leave that? Hi, welcome to my backyard. Just wanted to film somewhere different today. I'm hoping there's like a broken sprinkler in my neighbor's yard, and I am hoping, I'm not sure if the camera will catch it, but hopefully you can't hear that. But if you hear the sound of running water, I don't live by a river or a stream. It is a giant broken sprinkler right next to me. But anyways, I wanted to get outdoors today, but as it is a lovely day today. It must be in the 70s right now. I prefer a little cooler. But yeah, today is just like a really nice day outside. I was gonna take homeboy over here on a walk because Daniel is currently getting dialysis right now. And I decided against it because I actually have to be at my sister's house in a little bit. She's gonna cook dinner for us. And my parents are gonna be there. And so I'm waiting for Daniel to get out of dialysis, come home. He might wanna shower. He might be too tired and just kind of head over however he feels. But yeah, that's kind of what I'm waiting on, for Daniel to get home, and then we'll head out. So I thought that while I did that, I would just sit down and chat. And I have a lot in my heart in terms of the topic of faith and sharing our faith. So I actually did a short, I posted it a little while back, but it was a short about how faith is not like serving God or being a Christian. It has nothing to do with how guilty you like feel about yourself. It has nothing to do, this guy's just gonna be walking around. But it has nothing to do with your merit. It has nothing to do with how good of a person you think you are, anything like that. Serving God is by grace. But at the same time, feeling conviction is part of that. What God did for us, what Jesus did for us, is free, right? It was by grace. But it doesn't mean that we can just kind of do whatever we want with our lives. And I feel like oh my gosh, Suzu? I was like, Suzu's totally about to go, and there he goes. I was like, he is totally about to go jump in that sprinkler. He's a very unusual chocolate lab though. Oh, no baby, not right now. Thank you though. Go play, go. Ow. Throughout what I have gone through in the last 2 years, and if you don't know our story, my husband is a dialysis patient as a result of having COVID, and I am a registered nurse, so our story is just insane as it gets. But he almost passed away in 2021. It has been in really life-altering and life-threatening situations over the last 2 years as a result of having the pandemic disease. And our lives are crazy. He's on dialysis in his 20s, and we're waiting for the call for him to get a kidney transplant. So it is quite insane what we have had to walk through in the last couple of years. But I love to talk about my faith as a Christian because I myself questioned God, questioned his goodness, questioned everything over the last 2 years, questioned everything I believe in. And God, number one, is not scared of that. And Christians should not be scared to question their faith. You should question what you believe in. You should question how you feel about what you believe in. You should question what you're being taught and what you are reading. But the conclusion that I come to over and over again when I read the scriptures, when I pray, when I go to church, the same thing I keep coming back to. God is good. God has been good to me. He has shown up in my life, and I know him to be real. And that's okay. Ow, well, why do you have to hit me with it? Something that would happen in the primitive church, so we're talking about the church that arose in the book of Acts. This church, which by the way is the church that was born out of the death and resurrection of Jesus, that's when we start seeing Christians arising, creating churches, home churches. That's really what we call kind of like the start of the church. It's pretty insane because you see there was a group of Christians, and I'll try to kind of show you the Bible verse here, but there is a group of Christians that it says every time the apostles will preach to them, they would go home and compare it to the scriptures and try to say, is this true? Like, is this real? What are they teaching us? You know, making sure that they were being taught true things. That is amazing. That is exactly how it should be. We should go home and whenever we're taught something and go and analyze it against the scriptures and question, is this real? And in the span of these 2 years, just to give you a little bit of my background, I am a registered nurse, like that's my career, but I've actually am a licensed minister with the Assemblies of God. My husband is a certified minister with the Assemblies of God. We've been, my husband has been a youth pastor, I've been a worship pastor at 2 different churches. Like we're as Christian as it gets, right? My husband was born and raised in church. I came to know Christ at the age of 12, and for him, his whole life, me over half my life, I have been in church and devoted to church, like casting away things that I know God doesn't like and choosing to live holy, I guess. I don't know how to explain it, but a very devout Christian, someone who like truly loves the Lord. And over the span of these last 2 years, there have been moments where I questioned everything. I was like, how can a good God allow so much bitter and difficult pain to happen in our lives over the span of 2 years? Like, we were so faithful to God, and then we have to go through all of this. Where is the justification in that? Like, how is that okay? And I've grown bitter, I've gotten angry. Like, I'm so transparent about these things because I think there are other Christians who might be going through very similar things in their own lives. And you don't want to get a wishy-washy answer, and I don't want to give you that either. And I wouldn't want to receive that, so that's not what I want to tell the world. That's not what I want to tell people. Being a Christian is not easy, and there are moments when you doubt everything. But here's the thing, God isn't afraid of our questions. If you look at the book of Job, which I feel very led by God to go and read that, because if there is a prime example of suffering, all of us Christians, we go, oh yeah, Job. Job is a man who suffered in the Bible. And the thing is that I used to tell people that too, like, oh yeah, Job, and how many messages and sermons we've heard on Job, and how many times I've preached sermons about Job. But it wasn't until I was in the middle of my own suffering, where it wasn't me telling another person, oh, God is with you, I'm praying for you, and it was now me who was in the middle of the worst suffering imaginable, and people were telling me, oh, I'm praying for you, or I hope everything works out, and I'm here going, I'm so bitter right now. Like, I want to throw away everything I've ever believed in. And I started reading the book of Job, and I was actually amazed by what I found, because Job is a man, just to kind of give you a synopsis of the story, he was wealthy, had lots of children, which is also a sign of prosperity, because in those times, that's how you passed on your wealth, through children. He had sons, he had daughters, and it says every day he was a very devout man. Every day he would offer sacrifices to God on behalf of his children. He had servants, livestock, land. I mean, very, very wealthy and blessed man. And he was devout in his faith, which was, he had everything. And it says that literally from like seemingly overnight, he loses everything. All of his children die, all of them. He loses all of his property, all of his livestock. And then at the very end, his own body is afflicted with an illness so horrible that it says he would break jars of clay and use the shards to scratch himself. People will say it might be leprosy or other diseases. Then at the end, even his own wife just tells him, just curse your God and die. Like, we have nothing left, just die. Now, I do not sit here and pretend to be going through the exact same stuff that Job went through. I do not sit here and pretend that my suffering has been as severe as Job's. I don't think so. I am very grateful to be experiencing good health in my body, except for a few things here and there, but nothing compared to having to use shards to scratch my own skin as it sloughs off. You know, despite all that we have been through, we have been very blessed. God has sustained us financially, sustained us, you know, in our health. My husband has overcome a lot of his struggles. I can't complain, is what I'm trying to say. But I found myself in a season just like Job where I questioned God. It says at one point, all of Job's friends sit with him for a few days in silence, of course, grieving what he was going through. But then they start all speaking up like they couldn't hold their tongue anymore because Job starts complaining about his suffering. And it says that they all tell him all sorts of things like, maybe you sinned, maybe you should pray. How dare you question God? Who are you to question God? And it says that Job ends up so angry because they kind of brushed off his suffering, or they waited with him for a few days and then they couldn't hold their tongues anymore. And at the end of this, Job has this whole come to God moment where he really talks to God about his pain and his suffering, and God tells him, I am God, you cannot question me. But even then, God just turns it around and he completely shows Job this immense amount of mercy. And it says that Job receives a double portion for all of his sufferings. It says that he has a bunch of children again, double the amount he had before, and basically he gets double of what he had before. He went through this immense amount of suffering, but at the end he ends up with double for his trouble. I had a youth pastor who would say that all the time. You know, we will go through suffering in this life, but it's really what we make of it. And there have been moments that, just like Job, I questioned everything. I wanted to curse the day I was ever born. I went through bouts of depression, something that I still have to safeguard myself against and seek help with. Because when you go through suffering, how can you not experience these intense emotions? Like, just because I'm a Christian, and this is the thing where I got hung up on. I'm like, I'm a Christian, I have to show this perfect amount of faith. And instead, where I ended up was this place where I hated myself. And that is what depression will do to you. And the enemy will start playing tricks on your mind. And I hated God. I hated everything. I was angry, I was bitter. But one thing that I will tell you that I am so grateful for is that I went to God. I went to him and I brought him my anger. I brought him my fears. I brought him even my disappointment and my bitterness. And I said, how could you let this happen to us? I feel like all my dreams are shattered. I feel like all my dreams are still shattering, because just when I think that we're finally out of this suffering, out of this hardship that we have been walking through, something else will come and just rear end us and just hit us out of nowhere, seemingly out of nowhere. And it's so incredibly frustrating. And if you're someone and you're walking through a very similar situation and you're questioning your faith in God, or maybe you don't even have faith in God, I just want to tell you, he's not afraid of your questions. The key in my life, I feel like, has been coming back to him over and over again, and going to people that I can trust and praying to God to open the doors so that I can talk to people that I can trust, who have been able to lift my hands in those situations, who have been able to show me kindness and pray for me. And this is a very interesting part, validate what I'm going through. I think as Christians, sometimes we think we have to deny our emotions, deny how we're feeling. That is so incredibly unhealthy. I can't even express how unhealthy that is, because that's not, I don't think, something that I was necessarily told, but it's just kind of where I went to automatically, to this place of denying how I was feeling. Again, God isn't afraid, just like he wasn't in the story of Job, to address Job's questions and to almost set the record straight. But I denied so many times. I'm like, oh, how dare I feel ungrateful? No, Carla, you have to be grateful. Why would I be grateful, when my husband is battling for his life? But God is not afraid for us to bring him those questions. And because you're a Christian doesn't mean you have to deny the reality of what you're going through. So I don't want to make this too long, but I just really want to reiterate to those people who might be going like, oh, Christianity is all about denying reality and all these things. No, it's not. And I have walked through intense suffering. And even though I was a worship pastor, even though my husband is a minister, even though we're like super Christians, because honestly, sometimes we really do get into that mentality where we think we're super Christians and that we're above making mistakes, or that we're above questioning our faith. But anyone can be brought to their knees. The Bible literally says pride comes before the downfall. Bible literally teaches us that we cannot lean on our own understanding or our own strength. And it's hard to not do that in our humanity, but it happens. And so I just want to say, if you're questioning your faith, or you're going through a season that is so hard that you're literally saying, how can you say there's a God? And worse, how can you say there's a good God? I can with all certainty say that he has sustained us through all of this. I encourage you, take the eyes off of your own suffering and try to look up. Lift your gaze, because it's so easy to get caught up in the middle of your suffering. I was speaking to someone that I really do consider a mentor in my life, and she was telling me, you get into the bubble of suffering. She called it like a bubble, where you see nothing beyond your own suffering and your own hardship, to the point where you will end up depressed, because you see nothing but suffering. And I don't think that's necessarily like our fault if we're going through something really tough that we end up in that bubble of suffering. Sometimes it is just suffering all around you. I mean, in the pandemic, there are people who lost their mother, their father, their sibling. I encountered that as well. My husband lost his grandmother. I lost my grandmother. I almost lost my husband. It was almost like one thing after another after another. I mean, even my dog, even my 16-year-old dog, while my husband was like in 2021, my husband was like super sick. She died. She got cancer, heart failure. She just died. I had to go put her down. It was like, are you kidding me? How much worse can this get? My grandmother passes, my husband almost dies, and then even my dog croaks. Because sometimes it is like one thing piled on after another. It's insane, you know, and it will make anyone question their faith. But I want to tell you, it's okay. It's okay. Christianity, God, the Bible, they're not fragile. They can take it. God can take a few questions. And I have found in the questioning of my faith that my faith has become even more cemented. Were there moments where I doubted all of it? I was like, I don't care if I've been serving God for years, faithfully. And I do a lot of air quotations because we tend to look in at ourselves and tell ourselves how amazing Christian we are. We're not. No one is perfect. No one is above falling. No one is above doubting. And we can get into this mentality of like super Christianity. We're just these super Christians. But I want you to know the Bible can take it. God can take it. Question it. Question all of it. And you will find. But question, but look for the answers. And you will find God won't let you down. He hasn't let me down not once. In the middle of my worst mental health struggles, in the middle of my husband's worst health struggles, God has sustained us. And I truly believe God can take it. God can take all of our questions. Anyways, I hope that this video has been helpful for you. I create multiple videos like these weekly, so don't forget to subscribe, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.